Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We are here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. And here is a little bit about what we do in the cannabis space as nurses before we get to this very special edition of honoring the authors of Courage and Cannabis. So we are going to get started right now.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship. And what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
It's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers. All right, growing in health, growing in cannabis, courage in cannabis. My name is Sherri Mack, and I am a registered nurse, cannabis patient, podcaster, advocate, activist, and really honored and grateful to be able to bring the Courage and Cannabis authors to life in our special series, honoring the authors of Courage and Cannabis. So I am going to get started here. Courage and Cannabis, I want to tell you all about Courage and Cannabis. I'm going to pull up the website here. And let's see, share screen, Courage and Cannabis. This is about Nique. So Courage and Cannabis is a compilation of stories written by doctors, lawyers, patients, caregivers, entrepreneurs, and activists. Each story is unique and written with the hope of inspiring others. In these times, anyone that chooses cannabis or enters into the industry has a story of courage. This is true simply because a very short time ago, cannabis was illegal everywhere in North America. The authors in this book took a leap of faith and courage when deciding that cannabis was the option for their lives. Some of you will find had to go as far as questioning their spiritual faith in the process. The stories in this book are meant to help and motivate others. Ultimately, we believe this book is for you. As you read and delve into the chapters, you will get to know the authors intimately, learning of their struggles, their triumphs, and their perseverance it took to be able to share their story in the pages of this book. The power is truly in the stories. So today we get to meet another one of those inspiring authors, Dr. Nurse Nique Pichette, perception coach and the Cannabis Nurse Navigator. With nearly 3 decades of dedicated experience as a registered nurse, Nique has traversed the front lines of healthcare, demonstrating unwavering commitment and pioneering spirit. Her personal encounter with breast cancer sparked a transformative journey, leading to her to create the Cannabis Nurse Navigator in 2016. This insightful initiative empowers patients to navigate their healthcare choices using cannabinoid therapeutics within the context of Western medicine. Nique fearlessly addresses stigma and bias within the medical system as a psychiatric nurse, championing a more empathic and informed approach to patient care. Her dedication extends to the role of research nurse at the esteemed Olin Neuropsychiatry Research Center, where she conducts human studies on THC and CBD under the guidance of Dr. Godfrey Perlson. Nique's innovative contributions include a pioneering tool differentiating appropriate and inappropriate use of cannabis. A true academic achiever, Nique earned her doctorate in nursing practice, DNP, from Salve Reggiani University, Newport, Rhode Island, on May 18th, 2023, this year. Her journey exemplifies resilience, innovation, and a commitment to advance patient care and knowledge within the healthcare landscape. Welcome, Dr. Nurse Nique Pichette. I am so grateful to have you on. This has just been amazing. Amazing, the work that you've done.
Thank you. Our time goes way back, Sherri, and it's really exciting to be here. We've both grown in leaps and bounds, and through tragedy and illness, we've, really taken that into a positive outlook on health and healthcare. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, Nique, we all don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to become Dr. Nurse Nique it. I'm not going to, you don't all wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be a cannabis nurse, or hey, I'm going to be a perception coach, or hey, I'm going to really go forth and try to change the dialogue and stigma around cannabis as medicine and working with patients. So you have an amazing story on so many different levels, both personally with cannabis and professionally with cannabis, and what's propelled you to do what you're doing now. We're going to talk about your chapter, Encouraging Cannabis, but I really want to tell the story of Nique Pichette and what brought you here today. And then that's going to lead into the amazing chapter that you wrote for the book.
Well, it was started with my journey with breast cancer, and breast cancer actually was a blessing in my life. I was first diagnosed in 2011 with a total mastectomy, left mastectomy, and was pretty much told by the medical team that it was gone. I didn't need to do anything else. And 18 months later, in 2013, my breast cancer returned. So that's when my life changed. And that's when my whole philosophy on healthcare started to take a deep dive into what wellness meant to me.
Yeah. So what did that look like? So how did you start utilizing cannabis as medicine? Did you start utilizing it right away, or was it something that you developed later? How did you get started? What was your interest in cannabis?
Well, during that time, I was a director of nursing operations. And as we all know, you cannot use cannabis and be a licensed practicing nurse, at least in 2013. So let me preface that I thought cannabis was a street drug. I did not feel that it had any medicinal benefits, and I never looked at cannabis the way I do today. Until I saw a picture of my son and I was allergic to all the antiemetics for the side effects I was having from chemotherapy. I was 111 pounds and emaciated, and I saw this picture with my son, and it triggered my recovery from my anorexia. And that's when I said, I have to do something different. I need a change. And I had started a blog. And in that blog, people were reaching out to me, telling me to use cannabis. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm a nurse. I can't do that. And it changed.
Wow. So when did your perception around cannabis change as medicine? Was it when you decided to use it as for yourself, or what was the light switch, the aha moment that, wow, this is something that could possibly help me? When was it? Because I know for every patient's story is different. And, I never, never in a million years thought that cannabis could help me with I was like, I'm on 18 pharmaceuticals. If they can't help me, how can cannabis help me? Right. So, and it was that aha moment of having that relief, that it was like, whoa, maybe this does work. Maybe this can help me. Maybe there is hope for me to, to be able to use this in a way that's going to, create change, mind, body, and spirit, to reach the health goals I'm looking for. What did that look like for you?
I think part of it was my caregiver. When I started in cannabis, I was in Rhode Island, and you had to choose a caregiver or a dispensary, as well as get your medical card, because it was only medical. So that whole process was, as a nurse, was kind of scary, because I had to walk into the Department of Health for my medical cannabis card. On the side of the door was my nursing license for Rhode Island. And I was really afraid that they were going to know that I was getting my medical cannabis card. But I had incredible people around me, and the caregiver that I chose and the doctors that helped me get my card were amazing. And I do have to have a shout out to Chappie Dickerson, because he was my caregiver, who now has a dispensary of his own. And he was also a veteran. And he came to my home with a care package of all different types of products, and from tinctures to edibles to flour to all drinks. And that is where he sat with me for, I think, about 2 hours, and basically taught me about it and said, just try it. Just see what works for you. And he left me his number, and I'm also a veteran, so we had that connection as well. And he made the transition so powerful, and it made me realize that for once in my life, I had control over my health care.
Yeah, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. So, okay, so here's an interesting question, because like you had said, we know that cannabinoids are biphasic in nature, that, utilizing smaller doses do one thing, larger doses do something else. And also too, with your history that you had mentioned so openly about having anorexia, were you nervous about using cannabis as medicine, that you might get the munchies, right? Or was this what you were looking for? Like, what were you looking for? How were you looking to use cannabis as medicine?
I didn't want to look sick. I didn't want to get fat, but I didn't want to look sick. And when I saw that picture with my son, I was like, wow, that's 111 pounds. I can't imagine what I looked like at 93 pounds. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. And I said, I need to be healthy, whatever that's supposed to look like. So if I can't take these antiemetics, if I'm allergic to all these antiemetics, and I had EPS, which helped me even greater as a psychiatric nurse, understanding my patients better with what EPS means, for the side effects of a lot of antipsychotics are the same thing. So this journey really gave me multiple layers of empathy in areas that I never knew.
So Nique, professional. So you used cannabis as medicine as a patient. You found it to be very helpful for you, and you have your unique story of what works for you, as we all do, because we all have different endocannabinoid systems. If you want to share that with our viewers, I'm sure they would love to hear that. Because your story is unique, and you're very, very sensitive to cannabis. And this is one of the nuances that we as professionals, as nurses, need to take in consideration, that the one size fits all approach does not work and can be very, very dangerous for patients if you don't do a true assessment and learning how to work with them effectively. So would you mind being open to sharing your story with the viewers, so they too can be cautious, some people that are out there that might be new to cannabis, that might be exploring it, and knowing that there are people that do have sensitivities to it, and that have to be very careful, and how you use that in an appropriate way.
I think it's very important. I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say a joke, but it's kind of like a tagline, start slow, dose low, but it really is true because for me, and I still haven't totally figured out why, but doses greater than 2.5 milligrams. I mean, that's less than what a microdose is for most people. Anything above 2.5 milligrams, I have to be very careful because I can start to become paranoid. And the paranoia is intense and it's scary. And for people around me that aren't used to that level of paranoia, it's almost can be not that I'm psychotic, but it's almost like a paranoid psychosis almost. Like I'm still in reality, but I'm not, if that makes any sense. Like I'm grounded, I know who I'm with, I know where I am, but yet the paranoia in my mind is so intense that as you've experienced with me, Sherri, it's hard for somebody to really truly understand. So I often speak about the negative of cannabis because so often people don't want to discuss the negative side effects of cannabis. It is not a perfect fit for everybody, as we know. And you really do have to uh, understand your own system. It's just like any other medication if you want to switch to pharmaceuticals, right? You don't take pharmaceuticals that just any dose that all has side effects. So same thing with cannabis. For me, it's very important that I know what I'm using, know how to use it, and know what to stay away from. Otherwise, it's a very unpleasant experience.
And the other thing too that's important, and it's neat because you're also into holistic healing and wellness. And so we know that the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoid dome is modulated by everything that we're doing or not doing in our lives. And so you are a proponent for health and wellness with your fitness, bodybuilding. Cannabis brought you into bodybuilding, didn't it, during your breast cancer after?
Well, it was sort of a combination. I used to compete in bodybuilding, and I started bodybuilding again to get me through my chemotherapy. So I made sure that I had a trainer that I had to meet at the gym. So that way I had to train. And lo and behold, working out, bodybuilding, going to the gym all enhances your endocannabinoid system. So as I was using cannabis, I was also bodybuilding. And 51 weeks after my last radiation, I got on the stage and competed in bodybuilding again. I was way ahead of the curve. I mean, that was 2015. I did my whole thing with Nique wear, and people didn't want to hear it back then. But it's funny. I just recently received a research study that they wanted to know for me to fill out a survey on cannabis and exercise. So if you wait long enough, you'll see that it's all coming to the surface.
Oh,
And as legalization happens, people are more willing to talk about it and to share what they're happening, even professionals. So,
yeah, absolutely. And so I want to also cover that you are doing some amazing things in this space as a clinician. Let's talk a little bit about your research and getting your doctorate. Nique, that's amazing. Doctor, nurse, Nique Pichette, doctorate. It's just
yeah.
amazing. I've known you, for a very long time. And so share with our viewers what that was like in that process, specifically because you brought cannabis into the equation of getting your doctorate. So this is really important. This is very, very courageous thing to do. This is a very hard thing to do because of the stigma and the bias that is cannabis is still a Schedule 1. And here Nique is going above and beyond, advocating for patients and professionals. So please share with our viewers the amazing work that you've done with your doctorate.
Thank you, Sherri. I started with my application and I submitted for the Cannabis Nurse Navigator. And that is where I thought my doctorate was going to go, was building out the Cannabis Nurse Navigator. And Salve Regina felt that process was going to be too great. So I still work as an inpatient psychiatric nurse. And at the time I was working as a night supervisor and COVID hit. And I started to see a lot of patients getting diagnosed with cannabis use disorder. And I wasn't allowed to talk about cannabis. I wasn't allowed to teach the nurses about cannabis. I put in an ANA CEU article at all the nurses' stations that was written by our friends Eloise and another author, and thought it would be great to educate the nurses. And I had to pull it from the nurses' stations. And I'm saying, how can we be diagnosing cannabis use disorder when the staff and the medical team here does not let you talk about cannabis, doesn't know about the endocannabinoid system, but yet we're diagnosing patients? So
And
So fast forward, I started to look into who, what, why, and where people were getting diagnosed with cannabis use disorder. And at the very minimum, it just seemed positive THC equates cannabis use disorder. And with more research, there's an ICD-10 code for cannabis use disorder. So positive THC, I can put a diagnosis and a label on you, and I can get paid for it. Now, do I think cannabis use disorder exists? Yes, but not at leaps and bounds like people were getting and are getting diagnosed. So I developed a tool. It's still in the process. It's not finalized yet, but I'm working on developing the tool to separate inappropriate and appropriate cannabis use. And that's what I did for my dissertation at Salve. So the first phase is done, which was putting this survey out to healthcare providers. And by that definition, it is any practitioner that can diagnose cannabis use disorder. So nurse practitioners can diagnose cannabis use, physician assistants, medical doctors, DOs, those type of clinicians. So the first phase is done, and we've seen that it is on point for appropriately separating inappropriate and appropriate cannabis use. Now we're working on going to phase 2, where we take the survey to the patient population so we can validate the tool, make sure it's reliable, and hopefully replace the Q-R, which was actually based on an alcohol use disorder inventory tool, which are two totally separate
tools and outcomes.
Right. Well, yeah, I was trying to say, like, alcohol and cannabis, two different drugs. I mean, people think of alcohol as a drug, but I mean, it is, so.
Wow. Wow. So the perception of cannabis, you have an event coming up.
Yes. Yes.
Want to share with our viewers on that event?
Sure. So that was exciting. With all the work that I've been doing, and again, sparked through breast cancer, I failed multiple times. I mean, in 1986, I failed out of nursing school, and went on a separate way and went into the military, and then came back and got back into nursing school. And I struggled through my master's with certain classes, and I actually failed epidemiology for my doctor's program, in which we got COVID. And I was like, this is epidemiology. You see, I'm a hands-on learner. So the irony is that I was able to get myself into the Honor Society, the National Honor Society, and we are going to be doing a panel for Sigma Theta Tau, the Delta Epsilon chapter in Rhode Island, in which there's a panel of nurses that are going to be talking about the perception of cannabis by nurses for nurses. And this is huge for the profession, that academia is going to allow us to present for not only their nursing students, but their professors and colleagues. So very exciting.
Very, very exciting. That's going to be absolutely amazing. So let's talk about writing. You've been a writer your whole life. You started blogging about your journey with breast cancer that led you to the Cannabis Nurse Navigator, which led to Positively Processing Perception, the Perception Coach. What was it like writing your chapter, and what was your chapter about?
So my chapter was about breast cancer and basically how the perception of cannabis and my breast cancer changed immensely because the day after the Boston Marathon bombing, I was at Brigham and Women's Hospital for my biopsy to see if my breast cancer had returned. So being around that environment, being in such a disastrous, traumatic event, it changed my whole concept of what breast cancer meant to me. As even my anesthesiologist had been working on victims all night. And as I laid there in my stretcher, waiting to go in, I was like, at the end of the day, breast cancer is really nothing compared to what these people have gone through and the trauma that they've just experienced. So it was a very deep experience that I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what the families, friends, and staff were going through with being in such a difficult time of healthcare.
So Nique, with the chapter of your book that you've written, right, Courage in Cannabis, what are the 3 things you want people to know most about you?
I think that I'm a patient first. I will always be a patient first. I try to be authentic, and the doctor is fun, but at the end of the day, it's about my heart, and it's about the impact that I want to leave on the healthcare system, and always keep the patient first. And our healthcare system is falling apart. I still work at the bedside. I'm still a psychiatric nurse. And I will continue to fight for patients, and I will continue to fight to change the structure of the healthcare system, because it's necessary and it's needed. And we need to understand that we're dealing with human beings, and that we need to treat each other like it's our own family, and we've lost that.
And you developed Positively Processing Perception. You want to share a little bit about that and how that might help the future of healthcare?
So Positively Processing Perception was built, and because of my own toxic behaviors, because of the way I was reacting and the way I was responding. And I could even take it back to my 94-year-old mom, the chip on my shoulder, to say it nicely. And although, I've been through trauma in my life, and although I've had my own share of ups and downs, you become sick and tired of being sick and tired of your own behaviors, and why you keep doing the same thing over and over again, thinking you're going to get a different result, which is the very definition of insanity. So you have to be the one to change the direction, and change what you're doing. I definitely learned that there's only 2 things that we can change, and that's ourself and our reaction to others. If you want to try to change other people, it's not going to work. And that goes from addiction all the way to changing your outfit. So something as simple as that. So it's been life-changing for me. It was developed from a petal of the Lotus theory, which is an incredible theory on PTSD that was developed by Heather Manis. And I just kind of pulled from the structure of what she developed and added my own perception to it. I use it all the time with my patients who are struggling, although I can't brand it in the hospital. I share it, and I've helped numerous people at least pause and stop just for a moment and try to understand, what they're doing to themselves, even if it's just for a moment.
Yeah. Very, very powerful work. Positively Processing Perception is a workshop that meets every other Wednesday. Correct?
Yes, on Facebook, and we're going to be looking at different platforms, but for right now it's on Facebook, and it's a free live workshop open to anybody. And it's Sherri, I do want to shout out to you. You've always been supportive and always show up. There's multiple people that are there with many different levels of experience in different areas of health and wellness, and nobody is paid. And they just share their time 1 hour every other week to help positively process the perceptions of even a simple text message or something that seems so innocent. But even in this conversation, Sherri's questions, she could be going for a different answer, but my perception of her question is based on my life experiences. So even in a simple podcast like this, it's really interesting as the podcaster what your thoughts and feelings are on the flow of the question and answers, and what mine are, just based on that very thing.
So, Nurse Nique, what is your why? What motivates you? What inspires you? What brings you hope? What brings you inspiration? What helps you to grow, and what is helping you to heal today? And what is your message to others?
I'm going to be extremely authentic, and a lot of people don't understand this and might not understand this, but I struggle with chronic suicidality, and to dream and to have a passion for change and know what plant medicine has done for me, it keeps me moving forward. So dreaming and pushing forward and fighting for this plant gives me the courage to continue to move forward and to put my feet on the floor in the morning when I wake up and thank God that I have another day to keep going. And that's my why.
There you go. And this is Dr. Nurse Nique Pichette. Nurse developed the Cannabis Nurse Navigator in 2016 to assist patients navigating their healthcare choices for using cannabinoid therapeutics. She is in volume 2. You can go to the website, courageandcannabis.com/authors, Nique Pichette, and you can get in touch with this author here. Nique, it's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Always, Sherri.
Yeah. And there's some amazing things that are coming up with the Cannabis Nurses Network. You want to give a shout out to our sisters?
Yes, sure. The Cannabis Nurses Network. We have a conference coming up September 29th and 30th. It's a virtual conference. You can get your tickets now. Incredible nurses and doctors that are speaking. And it's about conscious healing and conscious awareness. So check it out. It's really changing the way we look at healthcare.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap up with our sponsor. Today's sponsor, Bloom Hemp. Today's podcast is sponsored by Bloom Hemp. Bloom Hemp is a woman and nurse-owned national hemp and CBD supplier leading with quality, safety, valued, and patient-centered care. Bloom hemp products are USDA organic CBD grown in the mountains of Colorado and tested for purity, potency, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line to answer any questions and explain how and why CBD works in the body. bloomhemp.com, Green Nurse for 10% off. And that is that. And remember, everyone, what it is all about. It is truly all about living your best life, helping others do the same. Dr. Nurse Nique Pichette, Courage in Cannabis, Cannabis Nurse Navigator, the Perception Coach. Thank you so much for all that you do, for the hope that you bring, for the inspiration that you bring, for your courage, your growth, and your healing. You are truly making a difference, and I'm honored to know you.
Thank you, Sherri. Thank you for all you do.
And that's a wrap. We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.